Let's talk about robust criticism in public forums. Surely, as a society, we've got to toughen up a bit. The fallout from the police raids on the media last week is continuing, with the Prime Minister meeting with ABC Chair Ita Buttrose today. But there's also been a reaction from Centre Alliance Senator Rex Patrick, who's been outspoken about freedom of the press, and good on him. He was critical last week of the Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs, Mike Pezzullo. Fair enough. And apparently, Mr Pezzullo rang him to complain about some of that criticism. Fair enough too. Now Senator Patrick has responded publicly to that call, suggesting it might have been an attempt to intimidate him. In a lengthy Facebook post, he went into great detail and said, "I won't stop criticising ministers or secretaries or other senior officials as I discharge my responsibilities. They are all duty-bound to account for the exercise of power and the discharge of their responsibilities, and I won't be intimidated." Fair enough again, I suppose, but both the Secretary and the Senator ought to be able to engage in public debate and private conversations without feeling intimidated. Surely we are grown up enough to do that. Senator Patrick, by the way, will join me on the show tomorrow. And aside from the politicians, others who engage in public debate ought to be robust too. I pointed out yesterday that it was ironic to see media commentator Jane Caro given an Australian honour, given she so often sneers at Australia and Australians. You could just imagine how the ferals on social media reacted to what was a pretty fair and reasonable point, I would have thought. In fact, Caro's attitude was worse than I'd realised. Apparently, after the Coalition won the federal election, she actually suggested she'd rather be a New Zealander. And now she's honoured by Australians. Here's how she reacted to all this on Channel 7 yesterday.
Television commentator Jane Caro's been honoured. She tweeted after the federal election, "Australia is a backward-looking country in a backwater. I wish I was a New Zealander."
I think a lot of people say things that they don't mean. And I never said I wanted to go to New Zealand. I just said I wished I was a New Zealander.
Oh, funny being a commentator and saying things you don't mean, isn't it? Well, I made a tough but fair criticism of Caro, and I stand by that, and there was her response. Surely that's fair enough in the cut and thrust of public debate. Another place you expect some robust cut and thrust is at sporting events. And in the AFL at the moment, authorities are cracking down on abuse of umpires. Now, this is a tricky one because we don't want profane or ugly abuse of anyone, anywhere. But good-natured ribbing of umpires is part of the charm of footy. And yelling at the endless bad decisions can be cathartic. Believe me, I know. There's a lot of humour involved too. In Aussie rules, the umpires have always been derided as maggots because they're dressed in white and were blind. When they started dressing the umpires in different colours, no problem. We just started referring to them as green maggots. But apparently spectators have now been turfed out for using that term. And the Richmond cheer squad is demanding advice from the AFL about what terms are acceptable and what terms are not. Who knows whether calling the umpires visually challenged fly larva will be deemed acceptable in the future. But while the footy matches and the crowds and the grandstands ought to always be a place where there can be respectful engagement, including for children, the umpires do need to be robust. And we don't want to lose our sense of humour, surely. The alternative, of course, is they could get some maggots who know the rules. I'm only kidding. I am only kidding. I am an umpire myself. And as you know, all umpires are infallible.